Hey everyone, it's Bree. I am here to do a review of Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. So if you don't know, this is the first in what will be a 5-part series, and it is called the Expanse series. It looks pretty big. It's actually only about 500 or so and 50 some pages. The pages are like that really thick, not quite cardstock paper. The story follows Detective Miller, who works on a space station in the middle of an asteroid belt between Mars and Earth. He is given a private contract to find the daughter of a very wealthy family, and in doing so kind of stumbles across all sorts of craziness that's going on. Miller is thrown in with a space captain, Jim Holden, and his crew of 4 while they try to uncover the mystery behind Julie's disappearance. That's the woman who he was sent to kidnap. A plague that has kind of suddenly sprung up in their part of the universe, and the mysterious relationship between Mars, Earth, and this plague. So first things first, there were a couple of things that I liked about this book in particular. I thought the pacing was okay, not bad at all. And I loved the concept. I liked the idea of this kind of noir sci-fi with, kind of almost a Firefly feel to it. A lot of what he talks about, plagues and kind of freedom of information and government, the role of government, I find very interesting. In fact, I love the idea just in general of a plague kind of coming up. Anything like that in sci-fi, I'm just such a sucker for. I thought Miller was an interesting character, and especially the more he learns about Julie, the more he talks to her in his head, and I thought that was a really neat thing to see, especially because he eventually gets a hold of some video files and things like that about her where he can see her in person, and he realizes the person that he's made her out to be in his head maybe isn't the person that she actually was. And watching him kind of process the information I thought was very interesting. So let's talk character development. We've already said I kind of like Miller. He's a grouchy old guy and he's not always nice. In fact, he's pretty pragmatic and willing to do some pretty cruel things in pursuit of what he thinks is right. That being said, the rest of the characters, and to some extent Miller, they just fell a little flat to me. In particular, the side characters on Captain Holden's crew, with the exception of Naomi, his first mate, I thought all kind of blended together. Their histories weren't very important to what they were doing. They kind of all said and thought the same way, and their behavior was so similar that they may as well have just been one person. Corey builds Jim Holden and Detective Miller as 2 very different and contrasting people. He makes it very clear that Captain Holden is supposed to be this kind of righteous idealist, and Miller just isn't. He's kind of lived too long in the police life, and he's willing to do what it takes to kind of make sure everyone makes it out okay. And he doesn't really get any squeamish at all over killing people. Holden, on the other hand, is really pretty idealistic. He believes in kind of the justice system and freedom of information. In fact, freedom of information is a really big deal in this book. Holden, throughout the book, kind of finds things out and then releases it into the public. He says, I found this data stream, here it is, without necessarily thinking about the conclusions people will draw and whether those are the right things. This is a really interesting and I think timely discussion, especially with things like the NSA and Edward Snowden. But Corey is pretty biased. He makes it very clear that Holden is, you know, he's got, his heart is in the right place, but he's kind of a bumbling idiot. He releases this stuff, and then all of a sudden war breaks out, and then he doesn't think twice about releasing more information the second time. And Holden will even say, the reason that we were having these problems is because there are secrets. And to some extent, he's right. But he consistently is kind of kowtowed and made to feel bad by Miller, who is totally game on withholding information if it's going to keep stability. I think Corey means to do justice to the freedom of information and kind of open source community that we're seeing rise in the world. But he does kind of, I think, obviously fall on the side of Miller, the more cautious of the two. And that's fine. But I would have liked to see perhaps Holden's opinion being taken a little bit more seriously. I'll be honest, I didn't like how Corey entertains evil. There are a couple of entities and corporations that I think had room for ambiguous kind of moral decisions that he didn't talk about, and the ones that he made to be evil were very clearly evil. To me, it just took me out of the world. If you haven't read the book, I would suggest jumping down to the annotation that's going to be somewhere along the down bar, because I'm going to do a bit of a spoiler. Well, a big spoiler. So, if you've read the book, and we've all here read the book, right? You know that when they go onto Toth Station and after Eros happens, they find out about the Protogen company that has been controlling the information, right? That has been controlling the plague and essentially testing things out. This is where Corey kind of grates my gears. When they are talking to the head of the Protogen Research Center, who has been manipulating the samples and infecting people with this plague, Corey goes ahead and says, all of the people who work here must be monsters, right? And then they find out, of course, that Protogen has turned all of its employees medically into sociopaths so that they will have no qualms about, you know, doing these human tests with a plague that they know nothing about. And I think this does a very poor service to the nature of evil. The truth about evil is that it's insidious. Medical experimentation and social experimentation are often kind of ethically questionable, and part of the reason that that is because there is benefit to them. They're competing kind of ideas about what is good. You know, some are more utilitarian, some are more virtue ethics based. What Corey does by saying, hey, all of the people who work here are actually sociopaths, is he says that there's no room for anybody with any kind of moral compass to be working in medical experimentations that are kind of blind, and that no one can get fooled into doing the wrong thing while thinking that they're evil. Mary Wollstonecraft said once that no one does evil because they want to do evil. They do evil because they think that it's happiness, the good that they seek in life. And I think that maybe Corey could entertain that a little bit more. To me, that was the biggest problem that I had with this book, was the way that Corey approaches the kind of insidious and really kind of banal way that evil forms. Overall, I did think this was a fun read, and I think it has kind of a worthwhile place. It was interesting also to read it in contrast with The Martian, which is a very different type of sci-fi. I'd probably give this a 3.5 out of 5. So I'll see you guys later on in the week. I should be coming at you with a Slaughterhouse 5 and kind of maybe a mashup reviews. I'm also hoping, like I said earlier in the week, to do a couple of discussion videos, so keep an eye out for those. I'll talk to you later. Bye.